All right, well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad that you're going to record it and share it with others as well. I'm just going to do a brief overview of what Someplace Safe does, and if you guys have questions, we'll go through those afterwards because there's so much more. I'm Kim Anderson Moe. I have been an advocate with Someplace Safe for 15 and a half years, and I am currently in the position of the regional coverage advocate. So what that means is I travel all over our service area to cover wherever I'm needed. So Someplace Safe is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1979. So Someplace Safe has their 44th birthday coming up. And when Someplace Safe began, it began in Fergus Falls, and it was started by the Region 4 Council on Domestic Violence because they saw a need for a domestic violence women's shelter. So the beginning of Someplace Safe was as a women's shelter. And not very many years after that, other communities, and if I remember correctly, Big Stone County was one of the first communities to say, hey, we need some of these kinds of services. We need something here as well. So Someplace Safe started expanding. And they don't have dates and stuff, but Someplace Safe now does not have a shelter. We have not had a shelter since 2014. The funding changed. And when we took a look at the percentage of client services provided in ratio to the amount of money that was spent in the shelter, we did not qualify for that competitive funding. We do now have 10 advocacy offices in 9 counties. Otter County has 2 offices because of the geographic size of the county and the population. Also, Someplace Safe continues to expand their services. We have 5 parenting time centers, one of which is here in Ortonville. They share office space area with the advocacy office. And what the parenting time centers do is they coordinate supervised parenting time between non-custodial parents and their children. If they're court ordered, if child protection is involved, if there's a civil order such as an order for protection prohibiting contact between the parents, the parties, then Someplace Safe can provide a supervised parenting time. They also provide supervised exchanges. Again, in the case where there may be no contact between the parents ordered, then Someplace Safe can have a monitor present and supervise those exchanges. In a case like that, those 2 parties never come in contact with one another because of the way that it's set up. So the monitor is there to assure that. They also can coordinate things like supervised phone calls, supervised like Zoom meetings. So sitting in so the parents can actually have FaceTime with their kids, but if they're not allowed to be in physical presence. And they did a lot of that. They set up a lot of the Zoom meetings during COVID when the Parenting Time Center wasn't able to provide services in person, or when there were outbreaks and people didn't feel safe, and they were able to provide those kinds of contacts so that families could stay in contact with one another. Also, Someplace Safe now has 3 thrift stores. And one is in Alexandria, the second one is in Morris, and there's a 3rd thrift store in Fergus Falls. The advantage to the thrift stores for Someplace Safe is that as advocates, we are able to write vouchers for the people who we work with who need items. So if somebody comes to me and they have left a relationship, they're trying to start over, they need household things, I can write them a voucher for lamps and pictures for the wall and a couch and whatever they need. Clothing is huge. We have a lot of people who are struggling, and they come and get clothing vouchers, and they may come and get them relatively often. I just had a person call yesterday, I think, and she said, hey, can I get a voucher because I really need summer clothes for the kids? Sure, absolutely. Also, any of the proceeds that are brought into this thrift store go to support the advocacy programs, because that is our focus, is to provide the advocacy program. So just to make sure that everyone knows, because as Emily and I were talking, there's often a misconception about Someplace Safe and the services that Someplace Safe provides. A lot of times people, when they hear Someplace Safe, they think, oh, they help women who are getting beaten by their partner. Someplace Safe is so much more than that. First of all, Someplace Safe assists all victim survivors of crime, age infant to 100 plus, regardless of race, regardless of gender, or anything else. If you have been victimized by another person and have become the victim of a crime, then Someplace Safe is there to help you. So in addition to domestic violence services, Someplace Safe also provides supportive services, information referrals to victim survivors of sexual violence, sexual exploitation and trafficking, and other general crimes, such as survivors of homicide victims, burglaries, harassment, financial exploitation, and scams. And I gave Emily some of these brochures, but the aging population is at much greater risk of being victimized by the financial exploitation and the scams than anyone else. And part of that in our communities is that we were all raised to be Minnesota nice. What I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how hard is it for you if you get a phone call and you don't know who that person is, and they're saying, telling you whatever? How hard is it for you to just hang up that phone? We feel obligated for whatever reason, because our moms told us we have to be nice to everyone. So we feel obligated to continue that conversation. I'm going to give each of you permission to hang up the phone. You don't have to be nice. And what we have found too, in talking with law enforcement and talking with other people, these scammers, they're mean, they're nasty, they're bullies. I talked with someone one time who, she said, you've got to help my mom. I can't get it through her head that not to talk to these people. And she said, I even took the phone away from her one day and I said, who are you? And the guy said, I'm not talking to you. I was talking to her. You put her back on the phone now. She was like, what? Who do you think you are? But most of you are probably familiar with the grandparents thing, where the caller will say, Grandma, this is your grandson. Jill, don't tell mom and dad. And people do fall for that. My mom likes to play. My mom is 86, going on 60. And she was telling me that she had gotten one of those calls, and I said, well, I hope you hung up on it. And she said, oh, no. And I said, what? And she said, oh, no. She said, I played it. And she's like, really? Oh, my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she said, I played it for a while, and then I said, oh, which grandson is this? And she said, yeah, that wasn't what they were looking for, because they didn't have names. So we, as advocates, we will provide phone services or in-person assistance in our offices. So somebody can call and just ask questions. They don't need to give their name. We also have a 24-hour crisis line. So 24 hours a day, if someone is in crisis, needs help, wants information, wants to know how they can get safe, you can go somewhere to be safe, we can help them 24 hours a day. It is not an awake crisis line, so if you call me at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm on the crisis line, it might take me a couple of seconds to clear my head, to gather my thoughts and know what we're talking about. We also have a chat line that is staffed during regular someplace safe business hours, and we have a text line. So all of those services open up the accessibility to victim survivors to reach out to someplace safe, get the help that they need. All advocates with someplace safe are cross-trained to provide services and assistance in all areas. So I can assist someone who calls who's a domestic violence victim, or someone who is reporting that they are the victim of a sexual assault, or someone who is telling me that they have been sexually exploited or trafficked. I am trained to provide services to those people. People who are calling to report that they're being harassed by another person. Each of the advocates is trained to provide all of those services. So there's no specialty. If somebody calls, they're not going to be referred typically, to someone else because the person who answered the phone doesn't know the answers to how to help somebody sexually assaulted. One of the other things with our phone systems is if someone calls someplace safe today during regular business hours, right now there is no one in the Ortonville office. I was covering for part of the day. We don't have an advocate in Ortonville right now. We're in the process of hiring. That advocate covers both Ortonville and Wheaton. So we're hopeful that we're going to get somebody in place soon. But if you call the office number for the Ortonville office, it doesn't go unanswered. That phone will ring through to all of the other advocacy offices, so you will get a live person on the other end of the phone. So some of the services that we provide that are more specific services. Our primary thing that we do as advocates is we provide supportive services. We're not counselors or therapists, but we sit and we spend a large amount of time just talking, listening to people, determining what their needs are. We're not case managers, so all of the services that someplace safe advocates provide are client-led services. So if someone comes into my office and they're bruised and they're telling me I don't know what to do, what I can do is ask them, what's going on? And then, what are you thinking about? What do you want to do? Are you in a position right now where you want to leave that relationship? Are you in a position right now where you want a protective order? You want to get protection? Do you want to go to a domestic violence shelter? What do you want to do? And one of the hardest things is someone in that situation where they're not ready to leave and they just wanted a little bit of information. They wanted to ask some questions. They wanted to know if there is a way out to take that step. It takes on average 7 to 10 times of someone leaving a domestic violence relationship till they scale that relationship. So that's a good reminder for us as advocates. And it's not my job, unfortunately, to rescue people. It's not my job. It's client-led services. I can't do more than what they want to do. Sometimes it's really hard. So one of the programs, I said that we don't have a shelter, a women's shelter anymore. But what we do have is what we refer to as short-term emergency placement services, our STEPS program. We have agreements with approximately 18 hotels in our Someplace Safe 9-county service area. So if someone calls at midnight tonight and says, I just grabbed my kids, I'm not doing this anymore, I need a safe place to go, we can put that person in a hotel. It's short term, so typically that person, what we try to do is work with that person to find alternatives, to help them find. I recently had someone who was in a hotel for 2 weeks. And when somebody is in a hotel, placed by Someplace Safe, we take care of their needs. We pay for the hotel, we pay for their meals. If they have other things that they need, if they need gas for their car, if they need snacks to have in the hotel, if they left without any clothes and there's no thrift store close by, we will do what we can to go purchase clothes or track down clothes for that person. So we take care of their needs while we have them in the hotel, in our steps place. I recently had a person who was in for about 2 weeks, which is longer than what we like to have people, but that person was actively working on trying to find an apartment, trying to find a place to live. She had left her offender, and she wasn't going back, and she was making the phone calls, and she was looking at apartments, and she was in contact with HRA and whoever else. She was doing the work. So I got permission to keep her there until we could get her place into an apartment. And in some cases too, we do provide financial assistance to clients. And any financial assistance that we provide is what we have to show is that it's directly related to the property. So if someone, and it doesn't mean that they have been criminally charged or they have even reported to the police. Is it illegal to be physically abusive to somebody? Absolutely it is. But it very often is not get reported. But we can assist with financial assistance. That comes in the form of not necessarily only monetary. We get donations where we can provide personal care items, diapers, wipes, quilts, the thrift store vouchers. We can put in a request for deposit or first month's rent when somebody is moving into their own place. We can give things like gift cards so that they can get clothes or groceries or food. So there's a lot of things that we can do to help support people. It's so much better now. It's just when I first started, we hardly had a gift card. And if we had a gift card, we counted on donated gift cards. People would ask us for things and they would need things and we couldn't provide the things. How are you funded? We are funded 63 or 65% of our funding is through the Violence Against Women Act with the Office of Justice programs. So it's grants. And then the rest of it comes through other smaller grants and donations and fundraising. Each of the advocates on top of our the time that we spend working with clients, each of the advocacy offices is required to do 2 fundraising events a year too. And one's an awareness event, and the second was a fundraising event. So there has been special pools of money the last few years that have been specifically for client need. So that money is set aside and it's for things like first month's rent or deposit or a gift card to get food or the whole tax stays. So Someplace Safe advocates also do a lot when it comes to legal advocacy. We assist people with harassment restraining orders and orders for protection virtually. And if there are hearings for those types of restraining orders, as advocates, we help prepare them for court. When it was all in-person hearings, we would go to court with them. We were allowed or are allowed to sit at the counsel table with people. We're not their legal counsel. We are not attorneys. We are not allowed to talk in the courtroom, but we are allowed to help them to prepare, to go into the courtroom, to know what to expect, to give them like a template of ideas of, these are the things that are going to happen. This is what the judge will probably say. This is what you can say to the judge in this case. But now most of those hearings still remain via Zoom. So we still can meet with the clients like in our office, and we can be present with those people during those Zoom hearings. We don't assist with paperwork, typically like divorce or custody things. That's it gets too time intensive, and we're not trained to do those. So we refer out to other agencies who are trained to do that. Also, we will attend criminal hearings for, or with, or on behalf of victim survivors. So if their offender has been arrested and criminally charged with a domestic assault, I can track that hearing, whether it's in person or via Zoom. I can sit in on that hearing, and then I can let that victim survivor know what happened at that hearing so that they get that information right away. Prosecuting attorneys are required by law to send out letters of notification, but it doesn't always happen, and it's slow. By the time the hearing happens, and then they send out the letter, it's several days before the person gets the information. So it's beneficial for them to be working with an advocate to have us track those hearings and provide information to them. We also are able to provide emergency room response. So if someone reports to the emergency room and has been sexually assaulted, we have agreements with some of the hospitals where they automatically call for an advocate to be there with that person. I don't think that they automatically call, but, and again, because I haven't been right in Ortonville to know all the legwork that's been done, I don't know that they don't offer it though. Mm-hmm. Right. So that is something that one of the things that I do as a regional advocate too is I help train new advocates. So that's one of the things. Yeah. So that's one of the things I can do with training a new advocate once we get somebody in place is to make sure that they will make the connections with you to have nurse and talk with them and say, hey, make sure that you are referred to someplace safe because we can help them navigate this. And that's a lot of what we do is we help navigate what they're going through. Make tons of referrals to other agencies and sources. We also do tons and tons of safety planning. Whether they are leaving their abusive relationship or whether they are staying right where they're at. We do safety planning virtually every time. So that is huge. So just to give you an idea, in fiscal year 21, Someplace Safe provided services to approximately 3,000 clients. We responded to 1,860 crisis calls, so that was after hours calls, and provided total over 30,000 services. And in fiscal year 21, we provided about $200,000 in financial assistance. And what's that coverage area? Our 9-county service area, so I get this straight. Okay, so Wilkin, Traverse, Big Stone, Otter Tail, Wadena, Grant, Douglas, Stevens and Pope. Yeah. And one of the things that we do too is we work very closely with systems professionals. It's very key that advocates build those relationships with systems professionals, whether it's law enforcement or hospital or human services or whomever. We want those relationships because we want them to understand what Someplace Safe does so that they are comfortable referring people who may need, want Someplace Safe services.